In this video, I want to tell you about relating to common people. This video is not meant for everyone. If you are a commoner, then you can relate very easily to other commoners. Well, not with all commoners, but in general, you can get along fine with other commoners because you're common. Okay? But if you've been delivered, if you've been unplugged from the matrix, you still need to find a way to relate to common people. Because common people are around everywhere. And common people are not by default your enemy. No, they're not. It's just that common people have a mindset that makes it dangerous for you to be too deeply involved with them. You will have common people that will be loyal unto you. You will have common people that will do you good. Absolutely, you have those. But common people are easily tricked by the enemy, due to their chronic relief seeking. I explained that. So, just because someone belongs to the common people doesn't mean that they are a psychopath, that they are a narcissist, or they're coming after you. Just realize you need to relate to them wisely. Okay, let's begin with this. Common people relate to each other based on relief seeking. That is how they relate. Now, relief seeking simply means that they want ease. Ease at all costs. But, due to practicalities, they realize that they can't have peace at all costs, so they have values, things that they value. For some it's family, for others it's friends, for some it's more superficial things like pleasure, and pleasure can be gambling, smoking, running down the streets, whatever it is. Common people relate to each other based on relief seeking. Now, some relief seeking is centered around what the world considers high values like friendship, family, patriotism, political ideals. With others, the relief seeking is in fleeting activities like partying, gambling, and with some it turns into obsessive activities like sex fetishes or let me say binge drinking, hardcore gaming. You fill in the blanks. Just realize that common people or world people relate with each other based on relief seeking. It's the seeking of relief that connects them together. And even among worldly people, there are divisions. Because worldly people, because they are relief seekers, can only identify themselves in one another when they are similar to one another. Well, of course, they're all human beings, so that should be enough for them to identify themselves with one another. But worldly people, because their thinking is fear-based, that doesn't mean they're terrified emotionally all the time, even though their attitude is terrified because they're so holding on to relief seeking, because I mentioned before that worldly people have a terrifying attitude, not because they are emotionally terrified all the time, but because their thinking is fear-based, okay? So their thinking is fear-based. Their thinking is in avoidance of discomfort and clinging on to comfort. That's how they roll, that's how they think. So if you are seeking relief and you have fleeting values like partying all the time, and another has relief seeking in contributing to his or her family, then both are minds of relief seeking. It's both worldly, but one is considered more valuable by the world because the one tends to last longer than the other. Partying is over very quickly within a few hours and you spend a lot of money and more dangers are involved. So in the world there is duality, that certain values are considered right or good and others are considered bad or wasteful. Some are considered sacred, like family, friendship and all of that, and others are considered profane, like partying and gambling, etc. But When you look at the bigger picture, it's all relief seeking. That's all it is. And here's the thing, all common people know that their bodies will expire, so that one day they will face physical death. Now, some common people have religion in which they have ease with this idea. Others are either repressing it or avoiding it. Now, listen to this. When you are born again, you have been renewed as a spirit being. So now, this relief seeking that world people are involved in doesn't fit you anymore. Why? Because you're born again, you need to be active. Now, every human being needs to be active. But in the world, this often ends up in being passive aggressive rather than active. Now, because in the world they have all these ways to transfer their waste energies, they could get along with it. But when you are born again, you can't operate anymore in that transference of negative energy. Okay, because you are not in a fallen state anymore. You are in a renewed state. But now your mind has to be renewed so that in your soul you will operate in a renewed manner. And this will work out in your life. You get what I'm saying here? So when you are born again and you're renewed in your mind, let's say you are renewed in your mind, you realize that physical death is not the end. You realize that physical death is just a transference from one age to another age. You are born in this body as a little baby, and the body expires one day. You, the spirit being, is transferred onto shore. You're inactive, so you can't do anything, you're not even aware you're there. And when Christ returns, you're resurrected in your resurrection body. And then you'll remain forever. And that second body will not have an expiration date. That's it. So you know that your final expectation is life. So because you realize that the fear of death is BS, you're freed from it. You're not in your mind, so you're not bound by it. But because you don't have the fear of death, but because fear has been exterminated from your thinking, you relate to a positive manner to other people. You're not in fright anymore seeking relief like worldly people are. So when you come somewhere and you emit this confidence out of you, whether you're a male or female believer, doesn't matter, when you emit this confidence, common people tend to feel frightened by it. They tend to ask questions why you are not seeking relief, why you are not avoiding certain people, why you are not frightened. And when they notice this about you, there are two ways they can deal with it. They can cope with it, that means they put up with it. They either put up with it by evaluating your behavior and adapting their behavior to your expectations when you are around. So they are appeasing you. So that means that when you are around, they're very friendly with you, but behind your back, they tend to feel uncomfortable with you and they express this discomfort. Or they cope with it by acting out against you. This acting out can be in the form of just avoiding you as much as possible, or by violently go off at you, either verbally by so-called being quote-unquote honest with you, in which they project all their fright and all that vindictiveness onto you, or it can be physical violence if they don't manage to be verbally violent. That's the coping. The other way is that the common individual realizes that they're missing something and they become inspired by you and they begin to learn from you. That second way, it happens. And this often leads to the salvation and redemption of that common individual, in which he or she is not common anymore. However, let us be realistic here. A lot of common people do not do the second. They do the first. They cope. And some cope in a pleasant manner towards you, others cope in a violent manner. Or whether it's in a pleasant or in a violent manner, it's both coping. They really can't stand your confidence because it's frightening onto them, but at the same time, they have no real reason why they can't stand it. So that should alarm them that something is not right with them, but they don't want to look on the inside. They don't want to face themselves. So they will project it on the outside. And because you're the one with real power over there, they'll project it onto you. They will associate it with you. Look, violence is common in the world. Common people are used to violence. So violence, if you had violence, they somehow could relate to you more smoothly. Because violence is a very limited resource. Violence can be exhausted. And violence can have a powerful impact, for example, when you kill someone physically or when you attack someone and they have to spend years recovering. So violence can have a powerful effect, but violence itself is not power. Violence is the counterfeit of power. Alright? So in the world, you have violence that masquerades as power. And people are familiar with it. But when you come in the power, and you can accomplish far more than the world can through violence, they're frightened by that. They're not used to real power. Okay? Because they can't control nor exhaust real power. So when you're the one around with real power, common people that refuse to examine themselves, they will project their fright and eventually their violence that they put up with onto you. Because common people put up and they enable a lot of violence. Whatever they put up with and enable, they'll project it onto you. For example, just one is example here. Your name is Fred. You are a believer, you're renewed in your mind, and you're walking by faith, and despite tribulation against you, you got another job, the job pays well, and you're also involved in business. All sorts of things are working out for you. And now you have this one chick. She's a good looking chick. And when you met her, it was nothing romantic or anything like that. She was just very open to you. Okay? And when you're around, she smiles, she wants to be there. But at the same time, she's frightened of you. Then why the heck is she frightened? Why? Because she has a mother that uses suggestive witchcraft on her. She has a mother that constantly is bringing her down. And she's exhausted by her own mother doing that to her. And her father, who's kind of a wimp, tolerates it. And her father even turns on her violently when she stands up against her mother. Now, she's 21 now. She's living in her own student dorm. So she's not around her parents. But she still is not willing to face her parents to see who her parents really are. Meanwhile, she also developed codependent relationships with other people. The friendships she has are codependent relationships. She rarely speaks to guys, even though she feels attracted to them, even though she's wearing provoking clothes most of the time. She's wearing provoking clothes to prove herself to her female friends, that she's attractive, that she's wanted, all of that. She is codependent. And this codependence makes her vulnerable to predators, both male and female predators. But this anxiety she has, by the violence she puts up with and agrees with, she does not want to face it. So what's going on? She is projecting it onto Fred. That's why she's terrified of Fred, even though she really longs for the positive energy and good company of Fred. So she contradicts herself. She operates like a borderliner, pulling and pushing, pulling and pushing. Now what's going on? It has nothing to do with Fred. Absolutely not. It all has to do with the violence she puts up with and that she enables. She is projecting all of that onto Fred. Now, what's going on there? Fred, after a while, notices that he can't really get along with this chick. And you know what? Fred doesn't even bother with it because Fred has no intention of putting up with drama. Now that's an example I just used, and it's a common one. It also happens the other way around. That you have a female believer, and there's a male commoner over there, and the male commoner is projecting all kinds of garbage onto her. It also happens that you have a male believer, and a lot of the common men around project their fright onto him. And of course, it happens that you have a female believer, and you have a lot of common women projecting their anxieties onto the female. That's what common people do most of the time. You will encounter common people that will submit unto the power of the Holy Spirit inside of you, and eventually they'll be converted. Or at least they will acknowledge Christ as Lord. But a lot of commoners, they are in enmity against Christ. And this enmity will be expressed towards you. So when you enter, for example, let's say when you enter a store, just a small store, not a big shop, you enter a store, there are commoners shopping over there. Maybe it's a housewife with one of her best friends, maybe it's an old guy in his 80s and a young teenager who's 15, and you have the shop owner who's behind over there doing his thing. You enter the shop, and you sense that the moment you enter the shop, some of those people, they look weird at you, and you feel uncomfortable. What is going on? Those people are in the negative. They are in relief seeking. They carry anxiety with them. When you entered in the power, that anxiety of theirs was triggered because they sensed a real dominant presence that entered in. Okay? So now they respond to this dominant power with fright because it's not familiar unto them. Now they see you, they see that you don't have a gun, that you don't have anything that should frighten them, but still they'll feel the fright and they associate it with you. So when you're walking in that shop, they tend to look at you, they tend to stare at you, and then you ask, what the heck are those people staring at me? So after a while, you're so fed up with it, you leave the store. Why? What's going on? You sensed their negative energy. You sensed their violence. In this case, they didn't actively transfer that violence onto you. There are cases, for example, you enter a mall, or sometimes even a church, and you suddenly feel as if someone is stabbing you in your back or stabbing you in your stomach, or you feel as someone is hitting you with fists. You feel all kinds of attacks. So sometimes you may even feel someone has shot you with a gun. Even though you were never shot with a gun in your life, you feel someone has shot you. You feel all of that. Now what's going on? Someone over there is actively, even though they're passive aggressive, let me say it better, they are aggressively transferring their negative energy onto you. You're under a psychic attack. So that fright that you feel is a real attack, it's an energy attack, which eventually affects you physically. Because let's say it happens at the church and you go back home. When you're at home, you still feel pain in your body. You still have difficulty, maybe difficulty walking, difficulty eating food. Then you go to the doctor, and the doctor evaluates you, and there's nothing wrong with you physically, but still there are physical symptoms. Why? You have been the target of an energy attack. They transferred their fright onto you. So how do you relate to common people? You relate to them as fellow human beings made in the image of God, who have the right to be loved. Okay? That's what they have. They have the right to be loved. Okay? However, you realize you can't walk in love with them as long as they are not in agreement with Christ. You can walk in love towards them. And in the best case scenarios, they're open to your positive energy and you can hang around them for a long period of time. That's the best case scenario. But the best case scenarios, they don't always happen. Okay? But let's say there's no best case scenario. You relate to them based on practical issues. For example, if one of them is a colleague, you relate to them based on the work, based on business. And if it's possible, you give some remark, possibly personally, but if that's not needed, you don't do it. If it's your boss, relate to him in a mechanical manner based on the fact he's your boss at the workplace. If it's someone at a dance club or a salsa club, you relate to them based on the activities, the salsa or the dance that you share in common. You relate to them in a practical manner, realizing you can't go too far and too deep with them because they'll get frightened if they're not willingly to evaluate themselves. If they're willing to evaluate themselves and to be real with themselves, you can go very far with them. Then it's all onto them whether or not they submit unto Christ. It is up onto them anyway. You can't make them submit unto Christ. Well, you can force them to externally, but internally you can't make them submit unto Christ. Just realize that. Understand the following, that related to common people includes that you are aware all the time, because remember, even if they are on good terms with you, they can cope with you on good terms. Don't get me wrong, they can. Even if they're not willing to value themselves, they can be on good terms with you. But even when they are on good terms with you, their mindset is still dark. That means unclean spirits have access to them. So unclean spirits can trick them anytime in any trap. Now, not really any trap, because some commoners are quite alert, so demon spirits have a very hard time convincing them into traps. But overall, when demons make a lot of effort, they can get them into traps. And that means the demon spirits can set them up to do you dirty. And often when demon spirits set common people up to do you dirty, they're not even aware they're doing you dirty. They're not. They have this mist around their head that affects their brains, that prevents them from noticing what they're doing. I mean it. It can be that someone sees you and suddenly walks away. Or someone is in a conversation with you, suddenly they cut it off and they're very, very unkind to you. They say something very shocking. They suddenly, when you're talking to them, they suddenly make a remark about your hair, that your hair looks stupid. They do something very out of line. And you're shocked. You're thinking, what the heck is going on here? And later you inform them and ask, why did you say that? They're not even aware they said it. That's the state they're in. Some are far more easy for evil spirits than others. But in general, evil spirits can use and abuse common people very easily, and they can use them as tools against you. Does it mean that you have to avoid all common people? No. You relate to them in a wise manner and you're always alert around them. Okay? You should even be alert amongst believers, because believers can be tricked if they're not alert. So when it comes to common people, be alert when you are around them. Have no blind trust towards them. You should have some trust, but your trust should be practical and realistic, okay? Know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with common people. You're dealing with chronic relief seekers. Well, that being said, agree with Christ and be at peace.